Monday, blue eyes. Tuesday, green eyes. Wednesday, purple eyes. Thursday, gold eyes. Friday, back to blue. Same person, same face, different eyes, every single day. My name is Jessica Parker. I'm 28 years old. I'm a portrait photographer, which is ironic considering what happened to my eyes. I was born with brown eyes, dark brown, unremarkable brown, the kind of brown that nobody ever comments on. For 28 years, I had the same boring brown eyes that I saw in the mirror every morning when I washed my face, put on my makeup, got ready for my day. Brown eyes that matched my mother's eyes, my grandmother's eyes. A genetic inheritance that was predictable and ordinary and completely boringly normal. And then, 3 months ago, I woke up with blue eyes. Bright, electric, impossible blue. The kind of blue you see in contact lens advertisements. The kind of blue that doesn't occur naturally in people of Asian and European mixed ethnicity like mine. The kind of blue that made me stand in front of my bathroom mirror for 20 minutes, blinking, rubbing my eyes, convinced I was still asleep and having the strangest dream of my life. But I wasn't dreaming. My eyes were blue. Vivid, shocking, undeniable blue, and I had absolutely no explanation for how or why. At first, I thought maybe I was having some kind of medical episode, a neurological problem, a brain tumor pressing on my optical nerves, something that was making me hallucinate or perceive colors incorrectly. I called my doctor, made an emergency appointment, drove to the clinic with my heart racing and my hands shaking on the steering wheel. What if this was a sign of something terrible? What if I was dying? What if this was the first symptom of some horrible disease that was going to take everything from me? The doctor examined my eyes, shined lights into them, looked at them through various instruments, checked my pupils, my reflexes, my vision. And then she sat back in her chair and said something I didn't expect. Your eyes are blue, perfectly, naturally blue. There's no sign of contact lenses, no signs of injury or disease. Your eyes are healthy, they're just blue now. I asked her how that was possible. How do brown eyes turn blue overnight? She said she didn't know. That eye color is determined by genetics, by the amount and distribution of melanin in the iris. She said that while eyes can sometimes appear to change color slightly based on lighting or clothing or pupil dilation, they don't just transform from dark brown to electric blue in the space of a single night. She referred me to an ophthalmologist, a specialist who could run more tests, look deeper, try to find an explanation that made medical sense. But she seemed as confused as I was, as unsettled, as unable to explain what she was seeing. That was day 1, and I thought maybe, just maybe, this was a one-time thing. A weird medical anomaly that would stabilize. Maybe my eyes would stay blue now, and I'd just have to get used to having blue eyes instead of brown eyes. Update my driver's license photo. Explain to people that, yes, my eyes used to be brown, but something happened, and now they're blue. Strange, but manageable. Except the next morning when I woke up, my eyes weren't blue anymore. They were green. Not hazel, not a mix of brown and green that could be explained by lighting. Emerald green. Vivid, bright, impossible green. The color of leaves in spring. The color of tropical forests. A green that was so intense it looked artificial. And I knew, standing in my bathroom that second morning, staring at my green eyes in the mirror where yesterday there had been blue eyes, and the day before there had been brown eyes, that something was very, very wrong. This wasn't a medical condition. This wasn't something that could be explained by melanin distribution or genetic expression or any normal biological process. This was something else, something impossible, something that I was going to have to document because nobody would believe me if I didn't have proof. Chapter 1, 93 days of documentation. So I started taking photos every single morning, first thing when I woke up, before I brushed my teeth or washed my face or did anything else. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror with my phone camera and took a close-up photo of my eyes. Day 1, blue. Day 2, green. Day 3, purple. Yes, purple. Violet, like Elizabeth Taylor's famous eyes. A color that I didn't even know human eyes could be. A color that made me look like I was wearing costume contact lenses for some kind of fantasy photo shoot. Day 4, gold. Actual metallic gold, like a cat's eyes. Like something from a science fiction movie. Reflective and strange and beautiful and terrifying all at the same time. Day 5, silver. Day 6, amber. Day 7, back to blue, but a different shade of blue. Darker, more navy than electric, and on, day after day after day, for 93 days now. 93 mornings of waking up and not knowing what color my eyes would be. 93 photos documenting the impossible transformation happening to my body without my permission, and without any explanation that made sense. I'm a photographer. It's what I do for a living. Portrait photography, specifically. I photograph people. I make them look beautiful. I capture their essence, their personality, their soul in a single image. I've built my entire career on understanding faces, understanding light, understanding how to make people comfortable in front of a camera so their true selves can shine through. I've photographed hundreds of people over the past 6 years since I started my business. Families, couples, individuals, corporate headshots, wedding portraits, newborn babies, everyone. And I've looked at thousands of pairs of eyes through my camera lens. Brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes, hazel eyes, gray eyes. I know eyes. I know how they work. I know how light reflects off the iris, how pupils dilate and contract, how the colored part of the eye can appear slightly different depending on what someone is wearing or what the ambient lighting is like. What I'm experiencing isn't that. This isn't a trick of the light. This isn't perception. This is actual, physical, biological transformation. My iris, the colored part of my eye, is changing its fundamental structure and color every 24 hours. And I have 93 days of photographic evidence to prove it. The photos are disturbing to look at, even for me, even though I'm the one living through this. When you see them all together, scrolling through my phone gallery, it looks like a time lapse of someone slowly becoming something other than human. Same face, same bone structure, same skin, same everything except the eyes. The eyes that change and change and change. Never the same color 2 days in a row, cycling through shades that shouldn't exist in human biology. I showed the photos to my mother. She cried. Actually cried, tears running down her face. She said I didn't look like her daughter anymore. She said my eyes were the same color as hers when I was born, dark brown. That she'd looked into my brown eyes every day of my life and seen herself reflected back, seen the genetic connection between us, the proof that I was her child. And now when she looks at me, she sees a stranger's eyes. Purple eyes one day, gold eyes the next. Silver eyes the day after that. Eyes that don't belong to her daughter, eyes that don't belong to any human being. She thinks I'm having a mental breakdown. She thinks the photos are edited, that I'm using filters or Photoshop or contact lenses, that I'm creating this elaborate fiction for attention, or because I'm stressed, or because something in my life has gone wrong and I'm coping in an unhealthy way. She wants me to see a psychiatrist, wants me to get help. And I understand why she thinks that. If someone told me this story, if someone showed me these photos, I wouldn't believe them either. It's impossible. It defies everything we know about human biology, but it's happening to me. And I can't make it stop. Chapter 2, The Medical Investigation. After the first week, after 7 days of waking up with different colored eyes, I knew I needed more than just photos. I needed medical documentation, professional evaluation, scientific proof that this was really happening and not some elaborate trick or psychological condition. So I made appointments with ophthalmologists, eye specialists, the best ones I could find in Seattle. I explained what was happening, showed them my photos, submitted to examination after examination. They looked at my eyes with slit lamps, with optical coherence tomography scanners, with tools that could see layers of my iris that I didn't even know existed. They measured the thickness of my cornea, the pressure inside my eyeball, the health of my retina. They tested my vision, my color perception, my ability to see in different lighting conditions. And every single doctor said the same thing: your eyes are healthy. There's no disease, no injury, no abnormality in the structure. But the color shouldn't be changing like this. It's not possible. Not with our current understanding of human biology. One doctor, Dr. Sarah Kim at the Pacific Eye Institute, was particularly thorough. She saw me 6 times over the course of 3 weeks, scheduling appointments so she could examine my eyes when they were different colors, documenting the changes, trying to find some pattern or explanation. She took tissue samples from my eyes. Tiny, tiny samples of my iris that required numbing drops and a needle so thin I could barely feel it. Samples that she sent to a genetics lab for analysis. She wanted to know if something in my DNA had changed, if there was a mutation, if there was something in my genetic code that could explain why my eyes were behaving like a chameleon's skin, changing color to match some unknown pattern. The results took 3 weeks to come back. 3 weeks of me continuing to wake up every morning with different eyes. 3 weeks of documenting the changes. 3 weeks of my life slowly falling apart while I waited for answers that might make sense of this nightmare. When Dr. Kim called me to come in for a consultation to discuss the results, I knew from her voice that she'd found something. Something significant, something that scared her. I went to her office on a Thursday afternoon. It was day 47. My eyes were amber that day. Golden brown like honey, like whiskey. A color that was actually quite pretty if it weren't for the fact that it wasn't the color they'd been the day before. Dr. Kim sat me down in her consultation room and pulled up the genetic analysis on her computer screen. She showed me charts and graphs that I didn't fully understand, sequences of letters and numbers that represented my DNA, the code that makes me who I am. And she pointed to certain sections, certain sequences, and said, "These shouldn't be here." I asked what she meant. She explained that DNA is made up of 4 chemical bases: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, arranged in specific sequences that determine everything about our biology. Eye color is controlled by several genes, primarily OCA2 and HERK2, that regulate the production and distribution of melanin in the iris. Those genes create the brown or blue or green or hazel eyes that we're born with. And they don't change after early childhood once the melanin production stabilizes. But in my iris tissue samples, Dr. Kim found genetic sequences that didn't match any known human DNA. Not all of my iris DNA was abnormal. Most of it was completely normal, perfectly human. Exactly what you'd expect to see in tissue samples from a 28-year-old woman of mixed Asian and European ancestry. But approximately 12% of the genetic material in my iris didn't match anything in the Human Genome Database. It didn't match anything in any database. Not human, not animal, not plant, not bacteria, not virus. Unknown origin, unidentifiable sequences. Dr. Kim said it was as if someone had taken my normal human DNA and spliced in something else, something foreign, something that was now part of my biological code. Integrated so completely that it was replicating along with my normal cells, functioning as part of my iris tissue, causing the color changes that were happening every day. She asked me if I'd been exposed to any experimental treatments, gene therapy, stem cell procedures, anything that might have introduced foreign DNA into my body. I said no. Nothing. The only thing unusual that had happened was that night, 3 months ago. The night before my eyes turned blue for the first time. The night I woke up with blue light filling my bedroom and 3 figures standing around my bed and the complete inability to move while they did something to my eyes. Something that changed me at the genetic level. Something that made me part human and part something else. Chapter 3. That night, March 14th, 2024. That was the last night I was completely human. I remember it so clearly because I remember thinking how ordinary the day had been, how normal and unremarkable and exactly like every other day in my life. I'd had a photo shoot that morning, a family portrait session, parents with 3 young kids, everyone dressed in coordinated outfits, trying to get at least one photo where all 3 children were looking at the camera and smiling at the same time. It was challenging, like it always is with young children, but I got the shots. The family was happy. I was happy. Just another successful session, another satisfied client, another day of doing the work I love. After the shoot, I went home, edited photos for a few hours, responded to emails, updated my website, normal business tasks, made myself dinner, leftover pasta from the night before, ate while watching a documentary about bioluminescent sea creatures. Those strange fish that live in the deepest parts of the ocean where no sunlight reaches, creating their own light through chemical reactions in their bodies, glowing in the darkness. I remember thinking how alien they looked, how strange it must be to live in such a completely different environment, evolved for conditions that would kill most other life on Earth. I went to bed around 11:30, set my alarm for 6:30 the next morning because I had another shoot scheduled for 8 a.m., a corporate headshot session. 5 executives from a tech company who all needed professional photos for their website and LinkedIn profiles. I needed to be up early to prepare, to make sure all my equipment was ready, to get myself looking professional and energetic even though I'm not naturally a morning person. I fell asleep quickly. I always do. I've never had trouble sleeping. I'm one of those people who can put my head on the pillow and be unconscious within 5 minutes, sleeping deeply and dreamlessly until my alarm goes off. That night was no different. I fell asleep easily, comfortable in my familiar bed, in my familiar bedroom, in my familiar life where everything made sense and followed the rules of normal biology. And then, sometime around 2:45 in the morning, according to my phone's timestamp when I checked it later, I woke up. Not gradually, not the slow drift from sleep to wakefulness that happens naturally. Suddenly. Completely. Instantly awake with my heart already racing and my body flooded with adrenaline. Because some part of my brain knew, even before I was fully conscious, that something was terribly wrong. My bedroom was filled with light, blue light. Not the blue-white light of a phone screen or the bluish glow of street lights through a window. This was different, pure blue, electric blue, the color of lightning, of neon signs, of some kind of energy that didn't come from any source I could identify. It filled the entire room, coming from everywhere and nowhere, making everything look strange and underwater and completely unreal, and I couldn't move. Complete, total, absolute paralysis. Every muscle in my body was locked, frozen. I couldn't lift my arms, couldn't turn my head, couldn't even move my eyes. Just completely immobilized, lying flat on my back in my bed, staring straight up at my ceiling, unable to do anything except breathe and exist and feel terror flooding through every cell of my body. I tried to scream, tried to make any sound. My throat was paralyzed too, not even a whisper. Just silence and blue light and the overwhelming sensation that I was not alone in my bedroom anymore, that something else was there with me, something that was looking at me, studying me, something that had come for a purpose. And that's when I saw them, 3 figures, standing around my bed, one at the foot of the bed, one on my right side, one on my left. I couldn't turn my head to look at them directly, but I could see them in my peripheral vision. And what I saw made me understand that whatever was happening, this was not a dream. This was not sleep, like someone was editing the code that makes me who I am, changing specific lines, altering specific sequences, modifying me in ways that I wouldn't understand until later when Dr. Kim showed me the genetic analysis and pointed to those unknown sequences in my iris DNA and said this shouldn't be here. The finger stayed on my eye for what felt like a long time. Minutes, maybe, or maybe just seconds. Time felt strange, elastic, unreliable. And then the same thing with my left eye. The figure moved to that side, reached out, touched my left eye with the same gentle, invasive, transformative contact. Both of my eyes had now been touched, changed, modified, and I could do nothing except lie there and let it happen. When the figure finally stepped back, all three of them stood silently around my bed, looking down at me with those enormous black eyes, and I heard something, not with my ears, inside my head. A voice that wasn't a voice, more like thoughts that appeared in my consciousness fully formed, delivered with perfect clarity and absolute certainty. We have upgraded your visual perception. You will now see wavelengths of light that human eyes cannot process. You will perceive dimensional layers that your species is blind to. You will understand aspects of reality that have always existed but remained invisible to you. This modification is permanent. Your genetic code has been altered at the iris level. The changes will manifest beginning tomorrow. You will experience these transformations for the rest of your life. This is a gift, though you will not immediately perceive it as such. That was all. No explanation of why they'd chosen me. No asking if I consented to being modified. No discussion of what wavelengths I would see, or what dimensional layers would become visible, or what these transformations would actually mean for my daily existence. Just a statement of fact delivered directly into my consciousness. And then the blue light began to fade. The paralysis began to release. My muscles gradually came back under my control, and when I could finally move again, when I sat up in bed gasping and shaking and looking around my bedroom with wild eyes, they were gone. The blue light was gone. The figures were gone. Everything looked normal, ordinary, like nothing had happened, like I'd just woken from a nightmare. Except I knew it wasn't a nightmare. I knew it was real. And I knew that when I woke up the next morning, everything would be different. I just had no idea how different. Chapter 5, Day 1, Blue Eyes and New Vision. I didn't sleep for the rest of that night. Couldn't. I sat in my bed with all the lights on in my bedroom, checking my phone repeatedly to reassure myself that it was still working. That time was still passing normally. That reality was still functioning according to rules I understood. I checked the time. 2:58 a.m., 3:12 a.m., 3:29 a.m., 4:05 a.m., 5:13 a.m., 6:17 a.m., every few minutes, checking, making sure that numbers were advancing in the right direction, that I wasn't stuck in some kind of time loop or alternate reality or nightmare dimension. At 6:30, my alarm went off like it was supposed to. Normal sound, normal phone, normal Thursday morning with a photo shoot scheduled for 8 a.m. I got out of bed, went to the bathroom, turned on the light, and looked in the mirror. And that's when I saw that my eyes were no longer brown. They were blue. Vivid, electric, impossible blue. The blue of tropical oceans and perfect skies and contact lens advertisements. A blue that was so bright and so intense it looked artificial. Looked like I was wearing colored contacts even though I could feel that there was nothing on my eyes. No foreign objects, no lenses, just my own eyes that had somehow, overnight, changed from the dark brown they'd been for 28 years to this shocking, vivid, impossible blue. I stood there for a long time, just staring at my reflection, at this face that was my face but also wasn't my face anymore, because the eyes were wrong. The eyes were someone else's eyes, a stranger's eyes. I touched my face to make sure I was looking at a real reflection and not some kind of hallucination or projection. Real. Definitely real. Warm skin under my fingers, normal texture, normal temperature. Just the eyes were different. Just the eyes that had been touched by those long fingers, modified at the genetic level, altered in ways that were now becoming visible. I took a photo with my phone. Close-up of my new blue eyes. Day 1 of documentation. March 15th, 2024. The first day of my transformation. And then I noticed something else. Something beyond just the color change. I noticed that I could see things I shouldn't be able to see. The light in my bathroom seemed brighter, more detailed. I could see individual dust particles floating in the air, lit by the overhead bulb, drifting in currents I'd never noticed before. I could see the grain of the wood in my bathroom cabinet with incredible clarity, every line and whorl standing out in perfect definition. I looked at my hands and could see the blood vessels beneath my skin, not just the veins on the surface, but deeper vessels. Capillaries, networks of circulation that should have been invisible beneath layers of skin and tissue. I could see details that my eyes shouldn't be able to resolve. My visual acuity had increased, dramatically. This was part of it, part of the upgrade they'd mentioned. Enhanced vision. The ability to see in greater detail than normal human eyes allowed. I got ready for my photo shoot in a daze, moving through my morning routine on autopilot while my mind raced trying to process what was happening. Shower, get dressed, professional clothing, black pants and a dark blue blouse that I wore to client sessions because it looked put together without being too formal. Makeup. I always wore makeup for work. Nothing dramatic, but enough to look polished and professional. Foundation and mascara and a touch of lipstick. But today my hands shook while applying my makeup because I kept staring at my blue eyes in the mirror, unable to fully accept that they were real, that this wasn't going to go away, that I was going to have to show up to this corporate photo shoot with impossible blue eyes and somehow pretend that everything was normal. Coffee. I made coffee and drank it too hot, barely tasting it, just needing the caffeine to help me focus. And then I packed my camera equipment, 2 camera bodies, 4 lenses, external flash, light reflectors, tripod, backup batteries, memory cards. Everything I needed for a professional portrait session. I loaded everything into my car and drove to the tech company's office downtown, arriving 15 minutes early like I always do because being late is not an option when you're running your own photography business and your reputation depends on being reliable and professional. The photo shoot was supposed to start at 8 a.m. 5 executives, 5 separate headshot sessions, approximately 30 minutes each. Standard corporate work. The kind of job I'd done 100 times before. Except this time, when I walked into the building and checked in at the reception desk, the receptionist looked at my eyes and did a double take. She stared for just a second too long, then caught herself and looked away. Professional smile back in place. But I'd seen the reaction, the surprise, the confusion, the silent questions she was too polite to ask. I went up to the executive floor, met my client contact, a woman named Patricia who coordinated the marketing department and had booked the session. She shook my hand, smiled, said good morning, and then also looked at my eyes, looked away, looked back. I could see her trying to figure out if she'd remembered my eye color wrong from our initial consultation meeting 3 weeks ago. Had my eyes been blue then? She couldn't remember, but something felt off. I could see it in her face, that sense of something being not quite right. I set up my equipment in the conference room they'd reserved for the shoot. Backdrop stand. Gray, seamless paper background. Main light with softbox, fill light, camera on tripod, professional setup. Then the first executive came in for his headshot. A man in his 50s, friendly, relaxed, easy to photograph. I guided him through positioning, adjusting his shoulders, his chin angle, telling him where to look, making small talk to help him relax in front of the camera. Standard process. But when I looked through my camera viewfinder, I saw something strange. I saw him, yes, normal human man in a suit, but I also saw something else. A faint glow around his body, not bright, just a subtle luminescence, like a very faint outline of light that surrounded him by a few inches on all sides, different colors in different areas. Blue around his head, green around his chest, yellow around his abdomen. An aura. I was seeing an aura, energy field, life force. Something that I'd never seen before because normal human eyes can't see it. But my modified eyes could. This was part of the upgrade. This was what they meant by seeing wavelengths that humans can't normally process. I took the photos, got good shots despite my distraction, and the executive left happy, but my hands were shaking again, because I realized that my vision had changed in ways that went far beyond just eye color. I was seeing the world differently now, seeing things that had always been there but invisible. And this was only day 1. This was only the beginning. Chapter 6, The Wedding That Wasn't. By day 7, when my eyes had cycled through blue, green, purple, gold, silver, amber, and were back to a different shade of blue, I knew I had to tell Mark. Mark Chen, my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in 6 weeks. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, and he still didn't know what was happening to me because I'd been avoiding him, making excuses about why I couldn't see him. Work was busy. I had a migraine. I was coming down with something and didn't want to get him sick. Lies, all of it. Because how do you tell the person you love that you're changing into something that isn't entirely human anymore? How do you explain that your eyes are a different color every day and you can see auras and energy fields and details that normal people can't see? How do you say those words out loud without sounding completely insane? But I couldn't avoid him forever. We lived separately, which had made it easier to hide for a week, but we had wedding planning to do. Venue final walkthrough, catering menu tasting, florist consultation, 100 details that required both of us to be present and make decisions together. So on day 7, when my eyes were navy blue, a deep dark blue that was slightly less shocking than the electric blue of day 1, I agreed to meet him for dinner. A quiet restaurant we both liked, dim lighting that I hoped would make my eye color less noticeable, a corner table where we could talk privately. I got there first, sat facing away from the main dining room so fewer people would see my face, ordered water, waited. And when Mark walked in, smiling, happy to see me after a week of canceled plans, I watched his smile fade the moment he got close enough to really look at my face, at my eyes. He stopped 3 feet from the table, just stopped walking, stared. And I saw the exact moment when confusion turned to concern, turned to something that looked like fear. "What happened to your eyes?" he asked. Not hello, not how are you, just that question, immediate, direct, because my eyes were wrong and he knew it. I gestured for him to sit down. He did, but he never looked away from my face, from my blue eyes that should have been brown, from this impossible change that I couldn't explain in any way that would make sense. I tried to tell him the truth. I really did. I explained about waking up with blue eyes, about how they'd been different colors every day since then, about the medical tests, about the genetic analysis that showed non-human DNA in my iris tissue, about that night, the blue light, the figures, the paralysis, the touch that changed me at the cellular level. I showed him the photos on my phone, 93 days of documentation. Every color, every impossible transformation, evidence that this was real, that I wasn't making it up, that something had happened to me that defied normal biology. He looked at the photos, scrolled through them slowly, and then he put my phone down on the table and said, in a voice that was very quiet and very controlled, "I think you need to see someone. A therapist, maybe a psychiatrist." "This isn't real, Jess. Eyes don't change color like this. I know it feels real to you, but this is some kind of psychological break. You're stressed about the wedding, about your business, about something, and your mind is creating this elaborate story to cope. But it's not real. The photos are edited, or you're wearing contacts, or something, because this can't be real." I felt something break inside my chest. The man I loved, the man I'd chosen to spend my life with, the man who was supposed to know me better than anyone. He didn't believe me. He thought I was having a mental breakdown, thought I was fabricating evidence, thought I was so fragile and unstable that I'd created this entire fiction rather than face whatever was really wrong in my life. I tried to convince him, tried to explain that the genetic tests were real, that doctors had confirmed the DNA anomalies, that this wasn't in my head, but the more I talked, the more worried he looked. The more convinced he became that I needed professional help, not medical help, psychiatric help. We didn't eat dinner. We sat in that restaurant for maybe 20 minutes, having the most painful conversation of my life. And then Mark said he needed time to think, to process, to figure out what was happening and how to help me. He said he still loved me, but that he couldn't marry someone who was having a psychological crisis this severe without getting treatment first. He said maybe we should postpone the wedding. Not cancel, just postpone. Give me time to work through whatever was causing this delusion. Get therapy, get stable. And then we could talk about rescheduling. He said it like he was being reasonable, like this was the kind and supportive thing to do. But what I heard was, "I don't believe you. I think you're crazy. I can't trust you. I can't marry you like this." He left the restaurant first. I sat there alone for another 10 minutes, staring at my water glass, watching the ice melt, feeling my entire future dissolving just as slowly and inevitably. 6 weeks until our wedding. 400 guests invited. Venue booked, dress altered to fit perfectly, honeymoon flights purchased. A whole life planned out, ready to begin, and now crumbling because the man I loved couldn't accept that impossible things sometimes happen, that the world is stranger than we're taught to believe, that I was telling him the truth even though the truth was terrifying and inexplicable. I drove home that night with tears blurring my vision, except my vision was still enhanced, still showing me details that normal eyes couldn't see. I could see the individual raindrops on my windshield with perfect clarity, could see the auras around other cars on the road, faint glows of energy that pulsed and shifted, could see things that proved my eyes had been changed, modified, enhanced. But it didn't matter, because the person who mattered most didn't believe me, and that hurt more than any physical transformation ever could. Chapter 7. The Instagram Collapse. I'd built a successful photography business over 6 years of hard work. Started with nothing but a used camera and a dream. Photographed friends and family for free to build my portfolio. Slowly acquired better equipment, learned editing software, studied composition and lighting, developed my own style, created a brand. By 28, I was making a comfortable living doing what I loved: portrait photography, families, couples, individuals, corporate headshots, personal branding photos for small business owners and entrepreneurs. I had a steady stream of clients, good reviews, a professional website, and an Instagram account with 87,000 followers. That Instagram account was crucial to my business. Most of my new clients found me through Instagram. They saw my photos, liked my aesthetic, read my captions that explained my approach to photography. My belief that everyone has a story worth capturing. My commitment to making people feel beautiful and seen. The account was professional but personal. Photos of my work, behind the scenes shots of photo shoots, occasional selfies to show the person behind the camera, tips about photography and posing and working with natural light. It was part portfolio, part marketing, part community building, and it worked. My follower count grew steadily. My engagement was high. My business thrived because of the visibility and credibility that social media presence provided. Until my eyes started changing. And I made the catastrophic mistake of they'd seen my Instagram, seen my changing eyes, seen the comments about me being fake or sick or unstable, and they didn't want someone like that photographing their important moments. Didn't want to trust their family portraits or corporate headshots or personal branding photos to a photographer who was clearly going through something that made her unreliable. My business was dying, my reputation was crumbling, and there was nothing I could do to stop it because I couldn't explain the truth without sounding insane. And I couldn't hide the changes because they were literally written on my face every single day in the form of eyes that wouldn't stop transforming. By day 30, I'd lost 34,000 Instagram followers. More than a third of my audience. Gone. And with them went my primary source of new client bookings. Gone. My income dropped by 60% that month. I had to dip into my savings to pay rent, had to cancel the expensive wedding venue and lose the deposit because Mark and I had postponed indefinitely. Which was really just a polite way of saying the wedding wasn't going to happen. My entire life, personal and professional, was falling apart, and all because three beings I didn't know and couldn't explain had decided to upgrade my visual perception without asking if I wanted to be upgraded, without warning me what the consequences would be, without considering that maybe I liked my life the way it was, that maybe I didn't want to see auras and energy fields and microscopic details if it meant losing everything else that mattered to me. But they'd done it anyway, changed me, marked me, made me other, and now I was paying the price for their gift that I'd never wanted in the first place. Chapter 8. What the Colors Mean. By day 40, I'd figured out that the eye color changes weren't random. There was a pattern, a rotation through specific colors, and each color came with different enhanced abilities, different ways of seeing that activated depending on which shade my eyes happened to be that day. Blue eyes meant I could see electromagnetic fields, the energy emitted by electronic devices, by power lines, by anything running on electricity. It appeared as a faint shimmer in the air, lines of force that flowed and pulsed with the current. On blue eye days, I couldn't go into crowded places because the concentration of cell phones and laptops and electronic devices created such a dense web of electromagnetic fields that it was overwhelming. Like trying to see through a fog of crackling energy. Green eyes meant I could see plant life with extraordinary clarity, not just seeing plants, but seeing their life force, their growth, their health. Healthy plants glowed with a vibrant green aura. Dying plants showed brown and gray. I could see which house plants needed water, which needed more light, which had root rot or pest damage. All just by looking at their energy signature. It was beautiful but useless for someone who lived in a city apartment with 3 neglected succulents. Purple eyes were the most disturbing. On purple eye days, I could see approximately 3 seconds into the future. Not clearly, not like a vision or premonition. More like a double exposure photograph where the present moment and the immediate future overlapped. I would see someone reach for a coffee cup a fraction of a second before they actually did it. Would see a car turn at an intersection 3 seconds before the driver made the decision. Would experience reality slightly out of sync, always knowing what was about to happen in the immediate next moment. It sounds useful. It wasn't. It was maddening, constant déjà vu, constant disorientation between what was happening now and what would happen 3 seconds from now. I couldn't hold a normal conversation on purple eye days because I'd hear people's responses before they spoke them. and then have to wait and pretend to be surprised or interested when they said what I already knew they would say. It made me feel insane. Made me question whether I was experiencing precognition or just going crazy. Gold eyes gave me something like X-ray vision. Not actual X-rays, I don't think, because I'm not emitting radiation or damaging people's cells by looking at them, but I could see through solid objects, see the structures inside. On gold eye days, I could look at a wall and see the studs and wiring and pipes inside it. Could look at a person and see their skeleton, their organs, the dense and less dense tissues that made up their body. The first time it happened, I looked at my own hand and saw my bones so clearly that I almost threw up. Metacarpals and phalanges and the delicate carpals of my wrist, all visible through my translucent flesh, like I'd become a living anatomy diagram. I stopped looking at people on gold eye days. Stopped looking at anything too closely. Just tried to keep my eyes unfocused, looking at general shapes and colors, without letting my vision penetrate beneath surfaces, because seeing everyone as walking skeletons wrapped in meat was more than I could psychologically handle. Silver eyes gave me the ability to see temperature, thermal vision. Everything appeared in a range of colors from deep blue for cold to bright red and white for hot. People glowed with body heat. I could see which parts of their bodies were warmest, where blood flow concentrated, where inflammation existed. Could see hot water pipes in walls, cold air leaks around windows. The heat signature of every living thing and warm object in my environment. It was actually one of the less disturbing abilities. At least thermal vision showed me things that existed in the normal physical world, just in a wavelength humans typically couldn't see without special equipment. Amber eyes, which I'd had 3 times in 93 days, gave me microscopic vision. I could see tiny things that should have required a microscope, individual cells, bacteria. The texture of surfaces at a scale that made everything look alien and unfamiliar. On amber eye days, I couldn't eat in restaurants because I could see the bacteria on every surface, the microorganisms in the air, the cellular structure of my food that made it look simultaneously fascinating and revolting. I lived on packaged food that I didn't look at too closely. Just ate quickly before my enhanced vision could show me details I didn't want to know. And the navy blue eyes, the darker blue that I'd had 4 times now, gave me the ability to see what I can only describe as auras, energy fields around living things. Not bright or dramatic, just a subtle glow that extended a few inches beyond the physical body. Varying in color and intensity based on health and emotional state and something else I didn't quite understand yet. Healthy, happy people had bright, clear auras. Sick people had dark or muddy patches. Stressed people had jagged, spiky energy fields. I was seeing something that spiritual practitioners talked about, but that science said didn't exist. Life force, chi, prana. Whatever you wanted to call it, I could see it on navy blue days, and it made me understand that living beings are more than just physical bodies. We're energy too. Electromagnetic patterns, information fields, something that extends beyond our flesh and maybe survives after our flesh stops functioning. That was the most unsettling implication, the suggestion that consciousness might be more than just brain activity, that we might be something that transcends the physical, that death might not be the end, but just a transition to a different state that most people couldn't perceive. But that I, with my modified eyes, might eventually be able to see. I hadn't seen any ghosts yet, but I was starting to wonder if that was coming. If maybe at some point my eyes would change to a color that let me see the dead, the beings who no longer had bodies but still had energy signatures, still had consciousness, still existed in some form that normal human senses couldn't detect. That thought terrified me more than any of the other abilities, because seeing the dead would mean knowing, absolutely knowing, that death wasn't the end. And I wasn't sure I wanted that knowledge. Wasn't sure anyone should have that knowledge. Some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. Some truths are too heavy for human psychology to bear. But I didn't have a choice. The modifications were permanent. My genetic code had been altered. And whatever abilities were going to manifest, they would manifest whether I wanted them or not. All I could do was document and adapt and try to survive with as much sanity and tact as possible. Chapter 9. The Mother Who Couldn't Recognize Me. Day 52. Silver Eyes. My mother came to visit. I'd been avoiding her calls for 3 weeks, making excuses about being busy with work, promising to come see her soon, lying because I wasn't ready to face her reaction to what I'd become. But she got worried, drove the 2 hours from Bellevue to Seattle without warning me, showed up at my apartment door at 10 in the morning on a Saturday, and I had to let her in because what else could I do? Tell my own mother to go away? Pretend I wasn't home? I opened the door. She took one look at my face, at my silver eyes that glowed in the light from the hallway, metallic and strange and completely wrong for the daughter she'd given birth to 28 years ago. And she started crying. Not quiet tears, full sobbing, her hand over her mouth like she was trying to hold in a scream. She just stood there in my doorway, looking at me like I was a ghost or a monster or a stranger wearing her daughter's face. I pulled her inside, closed the door, held her while she cried, and asked what had happened to me, what I'd done to myself, why I looked like this, why my eyes were that horrible, unnatural color. I tried to explain, showed her the photos on my phone. 93 days of documentation, every color change carefully recorded with dates and notes. Showed her the medical reports from Dr. Kim, the genetic analysis that showed non-human DNA in my iris tissue, the scientific proof that something impossible was happening to my body. Showed her everything I had to prove that this wasn't my fault, wasn't my choice, wasn't something I'd done to myself deliberately. But she couldn't accept it. She kept saying that eyes don't change color like that the photos must be edited, that the medical reports must be fake, that I must be wearing contacts or doing something to my eyes to make them look this way. She asked if I was on drugs, if I joined some kind of cult, if I was having a psychotic break and needed hospitalization. She said she knew I'd been under a lot of stress with the wedding planning and building my business, and that sometimes when people get overwhelmed, they do things that don't make sense, and that it was okay. She would help me get through this, but I needed to stop whatever I was doing to my eyes and get professional help. The worst part was that I could see her aura. Silver eyes gave me thermal vision, so I could see the heat patterns in her body, but there was also an energy field visible. Maybe because silver was close enough to navy blue on the color spectrum that some of that aura-seeing ability carried over. I could see my mother's energy field, and it was roiling with colors that indicated distress and fear, and something that looked like grief. She was grieving for the daughter she thought she'd lost, grieving for the normal life she'd imagined I would have, the wedding and grandchildren and ordinary happiness that seemed to be slipping away now that I'd become this thing she couldn't understand or accept. I could see her pain as clearly as I could see her face, and it broke something inside me because I was causing that pain and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't change back. Couldn't return to being the daughter she recognized, couldn't undo the modifications that had been forced on me by beings she didn't believe existed. We sat in my living room for over an hour, her crying and me trying to comfort her while also trying to make her understand. But understanding never came. Eventually, she stopped crying and just looked at me with exhausted, red-rimmed eyes and said, "I need you to see a doctor, a psychiatrist. I'm going to make an appointment for you, and you're going to go, and you're going to get help, because this, whatever this is, it's not okay. You're not okay." and I can't watch you destroy yourself like this." She left not long after that, hugged me at the door but held me at arm's length, like she didn't quite want to get too close, like I might be contagious or dangerous. Told me she loved me, told me she'd call with the psychiatrist appointment, told me everything would be okay if I just got the right help. And then she was gone. And I was alone in my apartment, looking at my silver eyes in the mirror, seeing the thermal signature of my own face, warm where blood flowed close to the surface, cooler at the tip of my nose and the outer edges of my ears, alone with abilities I'd never wanted and changes I couldn't reverse in a family that thought I'd lost my mind. I couldn't even be angry at her. She was reacting the only way that made sense from her perspective. If someone you loved suddenly claimed their eyes changed color every day and they could see things invisible to normal human vision, you'd think they were crazy too. You'd want them to get help. You'd be worried and scared and desperate to fix whatever was broken. The problem was that I wasn't broken in the way she thought. I was changed, fundamentally changed at the genetic level by something that existed outside the boundaries of normal human experience. And no amount of therapy or medication was going to undo that. No psychiatrist was going to listen to my story and say, "Oh yes, alien modification of your genetic code. That's a real phenomenon we have treatments for." They'd say I was delusional, schizophrenic, experiencing visual and tactile hallucinations that felt real but weren't. They'd prescribe antipsychotics, maybe recommend hospitalization if they thought I was a danger to myself, and maybe I'd take the medication just to make everyone else feel better, just to make my mother stop crying and Mark stop looking at me with that mixture of love and pity and fear. Even though I knew the medication wouldn't work because you can't cure genetic modification with pharmaceuticals. You can't medicate away non-human DNA. You can't therapy away the ability to see electromagnetic fields and auras and the future 3 seconds from now. The changes were real, permanent, irreversible, and I was going to have to find a way to live with them alone. Because the people I loved couldn't accept a reality that didn't fit their understanding of how the world worked. That was the cruelest part of this whole experience, not the physical changes, not even the enhanced abilities that were sometimes overwhelming and always isolating. The cruelest part was losing connection with the people who mattered most, because they couldn't believe me, couldn't stretch their worldview enough to accommodate the impossible, couldn't love me enough to trust that I was telling the truth, even when the truth defied everything they thought they knew. I was becoming invisible, not physically, but socially, emotionally. The real me, the me that was experiencing these transformations and trying to make sense of them and desperately needing support, that me was invisible to everyone around me. All they could see was a woman having a breakdown. All they could hear was delusion and mental illness, and nothing I said or showed them could change that perception. I was alone, truly, completely alone in a way I'd never been before in my life. And it was only day 52. I had so much more transformation ahead of me, so many more colors to cycle through, so many more abilities to manifest and adapt to and survive. And I would have to do it by myself because there was no one left who believed me. Chapter 10, The Support Group That Saved Me. Day 63, Purple Eyes. Future Sight Day, which meant constant deja vu and the maddening sensation of living 3 seconds ahead of reality. I was sitting in my apartment, alone like I'd been alone for weeks now, scrolling through my phone looking for anything that might help me feel less isolated. That's when I found them. The Rapid Transformation Network, RTN, an online support group for people experiencing impossible physiological changes. The group description said, "For individuals undergoing transformations that medical science can't explain, you're not alone, you're not crazy, your experiences are real." I almost didn't click to join. It sounded too good to be true. Sounded like exactly the kind of thing a desperate person would create to make themselves feel better about their delusions. But I was desperate and alone, and I needed to talk to someone, anyone, who might possibly understand what I was experiencing. So I requested to join. The admin approved me within an hour, and suddenly I had access to a private forum with 473 members from around the world. People sharing their stories, people describing transformations and changes and abilities that normal humans shouldn't have. And as I read through the posts, I realized something that made my hands shake and my eyes fill with tears. I wasn't alone. There were others, dozens of others, maybe hundreds. People whose eyes changed color, people who could see things invisible to normal vision, people who'd been touched by beings in the night and woken up different. One woman in Portland named Sarah described experiencing exactly what I was experiencing: eyes changing color daily, enhanced vision that varied depending on eye color, blue light in her bedroom 3 months ago, figures she couldn't clearly see but knew weren't human, genetic testing that showed unknown DNA sequences. She'd been documenting her changes for 4 months, longer than me, and she said the abilities continued to develop, new colors appearing, new ways of seeing manifesting. She said it never stopped changing, that the transformation was ongoing, progressive, that we were becoming something more than human, step by step, day by day. And nobody knew where it would end or what we'd be when the transformation completed. Another person in Austin named Michael said his eyes had been changing for 8 months. He'd developed 14 different colors so far, each with unique abilities. He could see sound waves on the isolation, the loss, the loneliness of experiencing something profound and having no one to share it with because it existed outside the boundaries of accepted reality. But here in this group, people believed each other, supported each other, shared advice about managing the abilities, about documenting evidence, about surviving the social and psychological toll of transformation. Someone named Elena in Madrid said she'd learned to control which abilities activated on certain days, that it was possible with practice and focus to dampen the enhanced vision enough to function semi-normally. Someone named James in Toronto said he'd found a job that worked with his transformations, night shift warehouse work where he was alone most of the time, where his changing eyes and strange abilities didn't disturb customers or co-workers, where he could just exist and work and earn money without having to explain himself constantly. I spent 6 hours reading through posts that day. 6 hours discovering that I was part of something bigger than I'd imagined. Not alone, not crazy, not the only person in the world experiencing genetic modification by unknown entities. There were others, and they were surviving, adapting, finding ways to live with the changes, finding meaning in the transformation even when it cost them everything normal. I made my first post that evening, introduced myself, told my story, shared my photos, and within 30 minutes, I had 17 responses, people welcoming me, people validating my experience, people offering advice and support and the kind of understanding that I hadn't received from anyone in my normal life. One message in particular stood out, from Sarah in Portland, the woman whose story had resonated most strongly with mine. She sent me a private message that said, "Jessica, I know what you're going through. I know how isolating it is, how terrifying, how lonely. But you're not alone anymore. We're here. We understand. And I'm going to tell you something that might sound crazy, but I promise it's true. This transformation, these abilities, they're not a curse. They're an upgrade. They're evolution. We're being changed into something that can perceive more of reality than normal humans can. And that's a gift, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it costs us relationships and jobs and the comfort of being normal. We're seeing truths that most people never see. We're becoming bridges between the human world and something larger. And that matters. That means something. You matter. Your experience matters. And we're going to help you survive this. I cried when I read that message, cried with relief and gratitude, and something that felt like hope for the first time in 9 weeks, because someone believed me, someone understood, someone knew exactly what I was experiencing and wasn't trying to fix me or medicate me or convince me that it wasn't real. Someone was telling me that I mattered, that my transformation mattered, that there was purpose in this suffering, and maybe she was right. Maybe there was a reason I'd been chosen for this, a reason my eyes were changing, a reason I was developing these abilities. I didn't know what that reason was yet, but knowing that others had found meaning in their transformations gave me something to hold on to, gave me a reason to keep documenting, keep adapting, keep surviving. I wasn't alone anymore, and that changed everything.